Good morning and happy Thursday, everyone. It is Thursday, January 8th, 2026. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Thursday edition of The Riley King Show. Here's what's ahead on today's program. The Senate advances an emergency loan fund to support Claremont schools. The House votes to reinstate hard labor for certain prison sentences. A trial begins in gold bar scam that cost a New Hampshire man more than $3 million. A pre-licensed therapist is charged with sexual assault, raising questions about oversight in New Hampshire. Protests erupt following a Minnesota shooting involving an ICE officer. The White House moves to tighten long-term control over Venezuela oil sales. The administration presses forward with its Greenland push aimed Republican distant. A manhunt is underway after a deadly shooting at a Salt Lake City church. And President Trump proposes a ban on large investors buying single-family homes. That's all coming up today on this edition of The Riley King Show. Let's get started now. First up, Senate advances emergency loan fund to aid Claremont schools. New Hampshire lawmakers moved swiftly at the start of the new year to address the financial crisis facing the Claremont School District and potentially other schools across the state. On Wednesday, the state Senate passed legislation creating a revolving loan fund aimed at helping school districts confronting sudden financial distress. While lawmakers from both parties agreed on the need to stabilize Claremont schools, the bill exposed divisions over provisions related to school choice and interest rates. Claremont's financial troubles come to light last summer, just weeks before the start of the school year, when officials discovered a multi-million-dollar budget shortfall. State Senator Darrell, a Republican from Salem, described deep flows in the district's accounting system that complicated efforts to assess the situation. The general ledger they used to keep track of all their accounting was too unreliable to look at as parts of their audit. Abus said that's how bad it was. Supporters of the measure say the loan fund would serve as a significant safeguard and significant for Claremont and any other districts facing an unexpected risk of insolvency, helping ensure schools can continue operating while financial issues are addressed. Democratic senators, however, objected to parts of the bill that would expand school choice options for Claremont students through education freedom accounts. They also raised concerns about the interest rates tied to the loans, which are pegged to a federal rate. State Senator Suzanne, a Democrat from Lebanon, warned that expanding the education freedom account program could further strain communities already under financial pressure. I do believe by continuing to expand the EFA program is an unchecked manner that we could do harm to communities like Claremont and others, Suzanne said. Republicans countered that the interest rate are responsible and encouraged fiscal responsibility. State Senator Dan Innes, a Republican from Bedford, said charging interest provides an incentive for districts to avoid future financial problems. Don't you think that charging a reasonable rate of interest is actually an incentive for schools to avoid interest charges by being fiscally responsible? Innes said. Lawmakers emphasized that the fund is not intended as a bailout for poor management, but rather as a measure to protect students and keep schools open. This is no fault of the students, Abbas said. This is for the kids. It's their education, and this will save that school from being completely underwater. House votes to reinstate hard labor for certain prison sentences. The New Hampshire House on Wednesday approved legislation that would reinstate hard labor as a part of prison sentences for individuals convicted of the state's most serious crimes. The bill would apply to inmates found guilty of capital murder and aggravated felonious sexual assault of a child, allowing judges to impose a sentence that includes mandatory hard labor. Supporters say the measure is intended to strengthen accountability and better reflect the severity of the crimes. State Rep. Terry Roy, a Republican from Deerfield, argued that current prison conditions fail to deliver meaningful punishments for offenders who commit violent crimes against children. Right now, if you have a child under 13 years old who is raped, that person is sentenced to 20 to 40 years in jail. Every single day, you and your daughter are going to reveal that crime for the rest of your life, Roy said. The person sentenced to jail going to work on getting himself a degree on taxpayer dollars. He's going to use his iPad. He's going to enjoy his time. He's going to work out at the gym. He's going to forget about your daughter. Democrats opposed the bill, raising concerns about public safety, inmate health, and potential legal challenges. State Rep. Linda, a Democrat from Nashua, warned the legislation could expose the state to lawsuits. It mandates labor campus for life, Linda said. It punishes people who are medically unable to perform, and it authorizes long-term isolation as an alternative punishment. That is a recipe for lawsuit. Civil rights activists also criticized the proposal. The American Civil Liberties Union of New Hampshire issued a statement condemning the bill, arguing that forced labor has historically led to human rights abuse and systematic racism, and urging the Senate to reject the measure. Under the legislation, hard labor would include work such as agriculture, field labor, construction, road maintenance, and similar physical demanding jobs. Supporters pushed back against claims that work would be abusive, noting that the task outlined in the bill mirror occupations held by many residents across the state. The labor that is used to define in this bill are the same daily task that many people call careers right here in New Hampshire and support their families, said State Rep Jennifer, a Republican from Winchester. The bill now heads to State Senate for a consideration. Trial begins in gold bar scam that cost a New Hampshire man more than $3 million. A criminal trial began on Monday for a man accused of orchestrating a scam that prosecutors say defrauded a 72-year-old New Hampshire resident of more than $3 million. According to prosecutors, the victim was led to believe his identity had been compromised and that his life savings were at risk. Authorities say the scammers convinced him that the only way to protect his money was to withdraw it and convert it into gold bars. Defense attorneys for the accused maintain that their client is innocent. The case comes amid a sharp rise in gold bar and illicit cash scams, according to the FBI. The FBI's Boston office reported documenting more than 100 such cases between 2023 and May of 2025, with victims across 4 New England states losing a combined $26 million. The state director for AARP New Hampshire said scammers often exploit trust in well-known institutions by impersonating them. Respected institutions act in very predictable ways, the director of AARP New Hampshire said. They are not going to ask you to go and withdraw your money and convert it into some other form. She said scammers frequently rely on unsolicited calls and high-pressure tactics designed to force quick decisions. While such schemes may seem obvious in hindsight, the director of AARP New Hampshire noted that criminals are skilled at manipulating fear and urgency. You hear it, and you're like, how could anybody fall for that? She said, but the point is that these are criminals. They are very good at what and when they do it. The state directive, AARP New Hampshire, recommends that anyone who suspects a scam contact a trusted friend or family member before taking action. You have somebody you can talk to, so you're not just in your head when you're feeling so scared, she said. It's going to take all of us working together if you're going to help protect each other. AARP offers information about scams and fraud on its website, including a helpline for those seeking guidance. The FBI also urges victims of fraud or attempted fraud to file a report with its Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov as soon as possible. Pre-licensed therapist charged with sexual assault, prompting scrutiny of oversight in New Hampshire. A pre-licensed therapist in New Hampshire is facing multiple felonious charges, raising renewed questions about how therapists in training are supervised while treating patients. Daniel Thibault, 51, of Laconia, was arrested Monday and charged with 2 counts of felonious sexual assault and 1 count of aggravated felonious sexual assault. According to court records, the alleged assault occurred inside Thibault's office in Bow. Police said the patient involved initially sought counseling from Thibault for marriage-related issues. Under New Hampshire's licensing structure, pre-licensed therapists are permitted to see patients on their own, though they are required to work under the supervision of a licensed professional. That supervision typically involves reviewing session notes and consulting about treatment rather than direct observation. Once you graduate, you cannot just go set up shop anywhere you want, said Eric McCrowdy, a professor of physiology at Keene State University. He explained that becoming a fully licensed therapist is a lengthy process that begins even before graduate school admission. McCrowdy said aspiring therapists undergo a rigorous vetting process following years of supervised clinical work. Thousands of hours of patient sessions must be completed before an independent license is granted. A supervisor is there to sign off on your notes to make sure you're behaving in an ethical manner and to address any questions you may have, McCrowdy said. Court documents indicate Thelbert was working toward full licensure at the time of the alleged incidents. One patient told police that in August, Thelbert's behavior became inappropriate, alleging he kissed, rubbed, and licked parts of her body during a session. Thelbert's online professional profile states that he earned a master's degree in mental health counseling from Northwestern University and described his therapeutic approach as drawing from personal experiences with suffering, loss, and substantial fall from grace. WRMK News 12 has learned that Thelbert previously served a 9-year prison sentence followed a federal fraud investigation in Massachusetts, where prosecutors found he misappropriated more than $15 million from an investment fraud fund he managed. McCrowdy said the extensive licensing process exists in large parts to protect patients who are often especially vulnerable during therapy. What's really critical for those of us in the mental health profession is ensuring we do not re-expose our clients to the very harms that brought them to seek help in the first place, he said. Thelbert remains in custody and is scheduled to appear in court next week. Very interesting how this happened and how he was in jail, in prison for 9 years and then got a license like that. Interesting. Minneapolis shooting involving ICE officer triggers protest. A woman was fatally shot by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, prompting anger and protest in the community. Department of Homeland Security officials say the officer fired in self-defense after the woman allegedly drove her vehicle toward him. Video of the encounter has since circulated online, fueling sharp debate and divided reactions over the circumstances of the shooting. White House moves to tighten long-term control over Venezuela oil sales. The White House says it is laying out plans to indefinitely regulate the sale of Venezuela's oil. White House presses ahead on Greenland push aimed Republican distant. The White House is intensifying its effort to acquire Greenland, even as several Republicans break with the Trump administration over the initiative. A manhunt launched after deadly shooting at Salt Lake City Church. Authorities have launched an urgent manhunt after a gunman opened fire at a church in Salt Lake City, killing at least 2 people and wounding at least 6 others. Trump poses ban on big investors buying single-family homes. President Trump is proposing a ban on large investors purchasing single-family homes, a move that could significantly reshape the real estate market. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of The Riley King Show. Enjoy the rest of your day and talk to you all tomorrow. Bye now.